Torn between love and heartache, I question if my boyfriend's constant comparisons to his ex and hurtful comments are worth enduring. Despite moments of joy, I feel my self-esteem fading. Should I stay or let go for my peace of mind? Following recent posts, I truly need some advice and to express my feelings. I feel stuck, torn, sad, and heartbroken. I am uncertain about what to do. I love him dearly. For the most part, he is wonderful, but there have been issues from the beginning, and I have had a persistent feeling of, is this right for you, for a long time. I envision a long-term future with him, and I would love to build a future and a family, among other things, with him. However, I cannot continue feeling this way. Now I am at a crossroads. Should I trust my instincts and risk losing the love of my life, or can I move beyond this feeling? I have cried to him, and within this relationship so much that it feels unlike me. I look and feel like a crybaby. I am a sensitive person, but I do not usually cry this often. I keep crying because I consistently feel sad. He continues to make me sad, and I do not want to endure this anymore. He is causing me to cry. Since being with him, my self-confidence and self-esteem have diminished. I have never felt good enough for him. Even though I am the lightest I have been in years, I have lost 8 kilograms since we got together. I look at myself in the mirror and dislike my body. I feel too chubby and just see flaws. I feel significantly worse about myself now than I did before we met. He has been gradually chipping away at me. As mentioned in previous tagged posts, his frequent discussions about his ex while we were developing this relationship have been highly damaging for me. The frequency of these comments has made me feel like he is not over her or their relationship. I feel like second best, as if he is only with me because he cannot be with her, and the comparisons, discussing her body, features, sexual experiences, toys, positions, and confidence, have destroyed my self-esteem. He has also expressed concerns that I might be trying to compete with that relationship, which I am actively not doing. However, after being made to feel like sloppy seconds for months, what can one expect? Despite telling him numerous times, I genuinely do not believe he thinks it is as severe as it is. I cannot comprehend how he thinks discussing his ex in that manner would be acceptable, when I have communicated several times how it has affected me. He has reduced the frequency of mentioning his ex, which I appreciate, but as I mentioned in my post 2 weeks ago, it was not long ago that he was still discussing their sexual life in front of me and others, despite my requests for him not to do so, as it makes me uncomfortable. He claims he will not do it again. While he has not since, it has only been 2 weeks. To be honest, it feels like so much damage has already occurred. Aside from the inappropriate comments regarding his ex, he often puts me down, which further diminishes my self-confidence and self-esteem, making me feel inadequate. I have told him numerous times that he makes me feel unworthy. He reassures me and insists it is not true, yet he continues to engage in behaviors that make me sad. He frequently negs me, which he does not perceive as a problem or merely as funny banter, but negging is essentially just putting someone down. I have told him that sometimes it feels like he insults me to make himself feel better, but I do not understand why. Why would he engage in this behavior? Why would he continue to hurt my feelings and self-esteem even after I have told him it upsets me? I do not believe he realizes how harmful his actions and words are. Some comments he has made that have saddened me include talking about his ex all the time, elevating her on a pedestal, comparing me to her. This has thankfully stopped, but it has caused a great deal of damage. He has made inappropriate remarks about her body, praising her figure and discussing their sex life. He has expressed preferences regarding hairstyles, asked if I have specific accessories for dressing up for a night out, and mentioned the type of tattoos he likes, all of which pertain to his ex and not me. He has made comments about my body, such as you could develop more muscle on your backside. I love your backside. Some guys would prefer a girl with a bigger backside, and while discussing exercise, he placed his hand on my stomach and said, "You could achieve those nice lines on your stomach," both of which his ex had. He suggested that I should wear tighter clothing. In conversations about bodies, he remarked, "If you stood in line with a group of naked people, you wouldn't be the worst one there. Guys would think you look acceptable." He has repeatedly told me that I should develop a backbone. He has made it clear that he dislikes me wearing foundation. He used to comment on it frequently or express his disdain for having it on his face. Then he would follow with, My ex didn't wear or need foundation. I enjoy doing cardio at the gym. Whenever I go, he comments on it. I am not a gym girl, and I do not expect encouragement, but I will attend, and he will make jokes mocking me for only doing cardio, even doing so in front of one of his friends during my first visit with them. Just this past weekend, after seeing a sign for Samaritans, I mentioned that I would love to volunteer for them one day. He responded, "Do you really think you could handle that?" in a sarcastic tone. I replied yes, believing I could be of assistance. He retorted, "I don't know," to which I said that I had managed to keep myself going for this long and believed I would be okay. He responded, "Yeah, but you have always had people around you." He has labeled me as fragile and stated that I take things too personally, mentioning that I am a very emotional person, but that's okay. He frequently makes comments or jokes about us breaking up, implying that he is waiting for the relationship to end or for me to lose interest. However, saying such things while he has been engaging in these negative behaviors feels like he is playing mind games. I believe he has been psychologically manipulating me from the start, causing me distress and undermining my confidence. He may be trying to shape me into the type of girlfriend he desires, or perhaps a replica of his ex. I do not know. It is just so frustrating. It is painful. Why is he doing this? I feel as if he is forcing me into a corner. I do not want to leave him because, despite the negatives, so much of our relationship is truly wonderful. However, I need to determine whether I can continue with someone who behaves this way or thinks it is acceptable to speak to and treat someone they claim to care about in this manner. We have discussed living together, yet I know I could not share a space with him or anyone who makes me feel this way. My self-worth and mental health would deteriorate, leaving me miserable in an environment that is supposed to feel like home. I am exhausted from crying and feeling sad, from feeling inadequate. I despise feeling unworthy. I feel as if I am constantly seeking his approval. On top of it all, he sometimes performs the bare minimum. He has made it clear that this is simply how he is, and I have accepted that, so why would he exert more effort? He has told me numerous times that he does not invest much effort. He excels at quality time, but often tells me how lazy he is and expresses concern that I will get bored, offering no assurance of improvement, just, "This is it. Take it or leave it." I have not received a card from him for any occasions, including my birthday, Christmas, or Valentine's Day. He has never bought me flowers, knowing I like them. He claims he is not the flower-buying type, which sets a very low standard and implies, I do not want to. I felt compelled to exaggerate how our Valentine's Day went to friends, asking how our first Valentine's Day was. I attempted to change the subject, knowing they would judge his lack of gesture. But worst of all, I was aware that I would not receive a card. He even showed me cards he was considering, but I knew he would not actually purchase one. I do not care much about Valentine's Day or gifts, nor do I require a fancy meal, but to not even receive a card or an ounce of romance, and to accept it makes me think that if it is like this on our first one, it will always be this way. At this point, I am merely venting. I believe that articulating my thoughts helps. I do not confide in anyone about this because I know that if I speak with my friends, they will judge me for staying with someone who treats me this way, and I do not want them to judge him. This situation speaks volumes. I hate this immensely. Why is he behaving this way? I genuinely do not want to end the relationship. It would break my heart to do so. However, he is already breaking my heart. I am uncertain if I can summon the courage to end things, but I do not foresee any changes or improvements in his behavior, or that he will recognize how unacceptable and hurtful it is to act this way. I feel as if I am being cornered into making a decision that I do not want. I know I will be cast as the villain if I end it, and I foresee being overwhelmed with guilt. Story 2. My mother called me psychotic after I admitted to my brother that they didn't matter that much to me. I am a 20-year-old male living partially with my mother, who is 57 years old, my father, who is 45 years old, and my twin brother, who is also 20 years old, in a gated neighborhood. I spend most of my time in another city for school. Being the first person in my immediate family to attend university, I am naturally their pride and joy. I typically return only on weekends to see my pets and take a break from my studies. Therefore, we do not interact much, and they all miss me during my absence, especially my brother, who views me as his better half, which is nice to hear, I admit. Despite our rocky relationship, he is still a significant part of my life, and I cannot imagine going a day without his comforting presence. He grounds me in a way I cannot quite articulate. Although we may appear close, I do not think I can say I care about him. I do not hate him, but I have difficulty expressing how I feel about him. However, this does not bother me. I like myself well enough, and it did not bother him because he was unaware. The moment everything unraveled occurred about 4 or 5 weeks ago during a 3-week break I had from school due to an outbreak of scabies. I did not want to stay there at the risk of catching the disease, so I called my mother to pick me up, as my car was a wreck after a messy accident. While I do not feel much for her either, I do appreciate her for what she does for me, although I dislike engaging in conversation with her. I do not ignore her, but I am rarely the one to initiate dialogue. More often than not, I simply put one of my earbuds in and listen to music while providing basic responses so she does not think I am ignoring her. That fateful night when everything fell apart was a Wednesday. My brother and I had a little ritual as teenagers of hanging out on the roof, drinking, laughing, watching the night sky, and generally enjoying ourselves. During those specific evenings, he would talk about his work week, recent outings, and recent hookups, joking about how we could both attract some serious women if we went out together. I would share my recent flings and failed attempts at flirting with women at the bar, playfully teasing one another. However, that night was different. As we drank our beer, he began to pour out his heart regarding our mother's behavior when I was away. He and she always had a complicated relationship, which I will not delve into in this post. After venting about her, he started to speak about family and how it is the most important thing for a person to have. I will always remember this as the moment things began to deteriorate. Despite everything she does to me, despite how she makes me feel or how she makes you feel, she is still my mother, and I love her so much, just like you. You only have one family, after all, and I would literally die for her, especially for you, Op, he said, patting my back, his tear-filled eyes glistening in the moonlight. I echoed his sentiments with my own, saying, I will drink to that, as I usually do when he brings up a topic I have no real answer for. I have never truly been affected by his little quarrel with our mother, but he grew curious about my perspective, as I almost never share real personal information. I would typically tell him to change the subject to my latest relationship failure or embarrassing flirt, anything to avoid discussing my thoughts and opinions. Yet, for some reason, he kept pressing, reassuring me that since he shared everything with me, he would love for me to do the same because we are brothers, and I should have no reason to worry. He would understand. After taking another sip of my beer, I began to open up about my true self, as corny as that sounds. I told him that family did not hold as much weight or relevance for me as it did for him. Blood does not really mean anything to me. Whether we have known each other since childhood or are distant cousins I rarely see, it is all the same to me. Nothing noteworthy, I said. He was shocked, to say the least, and began asking me hypothetical questions about how I would react to terrible family situations, such as our mother being hospitalized, him getting caught in a fire, or going to prison. Despite what he wanted me to say, I told him the truth. I have been apathetic to their existence for a while now, even for a significant portion of my life. Honestly, I do not hate them. Do not get me wrong, but I simply cannot bring myself to feel anything genuine towards them or anyone else in my family, for that matter. He remained quiet for a while, sipping from what might have been his 5th bottle as I did the same. Neither of us dared to break the silence for a solid minute, but after a cow wandered into our neighborhood, we started cracking jokes again, and for a while, I thought nothing of it. I went to school, sometimes to parties, and then returned home for a couple of weeks. Since I had my car again, I could manage without bothering my mother for transportation. Everything was going smoothly until about 2 months later. At around 1 p.m., I received a message from my mother stating that she needed me to come home because she had to speak with me about something important. Of course, I had my classes, so I asked if it could wait until the next day, as one of my teachers had a nasty fall and could not make it. However, she insisted that I come home immediately. Therefore, I informed my teachers that I would be absent for a large part of the day. I then got into my car and drove back to my neighborhood. As soon as I approached the door, I could hear muffled voices, clearly some of which mentioned my name. Once I entered, the chatter stopped. As I made my way around the living room, I saw many of my family members: my mother, father, sister, grandmother, cousins, and aunt. It was surreal to see them all together. At first, I thought someone had died, and they felt the need to inform me. My mother then spoke. "Op, we need to talk." I recognized the familiar tone in her voice, the tone of misery and blame she used whenever we were children, and she wanted us to feel guilty for her plight. I asked what was going on, and she quickly replied, "We were informed of a little problem you recently revealed to your brother. We just want to talk," she said, her head down. I could almost see her holding back tears. I replied, sure," unsure of what to expect. One by one, they began giving speeches about the hardships of family drama, the importance of keeping loved ones close through thick and thin, and how I should not stay secluded and let them help me, whatever that meant. My brother was the last to speak. Although he had no bad intentions, his speech shifted from sadness to frustration as he felt that I had lied to him. "We have been brothers our entire lives. We have shared so much together, and you are telling me that all of this, the laughter, the tears, the anger, the excitement we experienced, is a lie. None of it was real, just some made-up stories you told to seem normal. So you could fool us into thinking you cared." His familiar aggression conveyed everything. He wanted my honesty and direct answers. I could see him watching me, searching for any reaction, but his words simply lingered with me, and I slowly faced the reality that they held no true meaning for me. I finally spoke after a minute of silence, telling them that while I appreciated the sentiment of organizing this little reunion due to their concern, it was unnecessary because there was nothing to discuss. My grandmother then chimed in, insisting that this was something we should all address. My sister echoed this, claiming she knew of a good camp we could attend in the summer to work things out. All the while, I was just staring at my mother, who was silently sniffling, studying her features as if I were seeing them for the first time. She then spoke up again, her voice much quieter, asking, "Do you hate us this much?" I will admit this caught me off guard, and although I did not know how to respond, I was already too deep into the conversation. So I just answered honestly, saying, "I do not care that much about you." The room fell so silent that you could hear a pin drop. After saying that, I quickly turned to leave, but I heard my mother burst into tears as I exited the living room and walked down the hallway. I paused for a moment, hearing her say, "How could someone so psychotic be my son?" I would love to say those words hit me hard, that they struck me like a punch to the gut, that I threw myself into my schoolwork to distract myself from everything, that I rushed back into the living room, crying my eyes out, begging my mother for forgiveness, that I collapsed and cut off contact, but I did not. I simply got into my car and drove back to my small apartment that I use for school. It was not long before the messages and calls began pouring in, all variations of them calling me heartless and cruel for saying that, and making our mother cry when it was only the truth. I am not seeking advice or resolutions. I am merely trying to process everything that has transpired over the last 2.5 months. I do not necessarily believe I was wrong for what I said, because they asked me to tell the truth, and I simply did that. Story 3. After 3 years of on and off breakups and cheating, I am left questioning if my partner's trust issues are unfixable. Can we ever find our way back? My partner and I have been together on and off for almost 3 years, and we have reached a point where I am uncertain if there is much more we can do. In the early stages of the relationship, it was wonderful. We clicked immediately, sharing numerous interests, and everything seemed to align perfectly. However, before long, my partner began developing the habit of breaking up with me whenever the stress of our relationship became overwhelming for them. They would change their mind the following day as if nothing had happened. This created a constant anxiety for me, but I was willing to be patient, knowing that they had never experienced a healthy relationship before. I thought that with time, they would recognize that this relationship was different from their past ones. As time went on, things escalated. They frequently broke up with me, claiming that our relationship was too stressful. They would turn off their location when they were upset, accuse me of infidelity repeatedly, and made things difficult whenever I wanted to hang out with friends and family. Eventually, we did break up for a time and did not see each other. They said they would approach things differently and not put me through those difficulties anymore, and for a while, everything seemed fine. Not long after, a lot of personal issues arose for me, preventing me from being there for them as I had been. My family had to move. I visited the emergency room for my first ever asthma attack, the effects of which lingered for over a month. I discovered I was pregnant and had an abortion, and one of my pets died. They interpreted my unavailability as a personal attack, feeling neglected and unsupported, even though I was doing everything I could despite my own stress. I remained patient, hoping that things might improve in time. Due to these circumstances, they ended up cheating on me 4 times last year, each time blaming me and claiming it was my fault for not providing sufficient attention. I genuinely believed it was my fault and something I needed to address. But as they continued to choose other girls over me, I eventually lost the desire to remain the best girlfriend I could be when they didn't seem to care about the pain they were causing me. Thus, I decided to break up with them. I tried to explore new connections and spoke with one guy briefly, but that didn't lead to anything significant. This detail becomes relevant later. In September of last year, 2024, they finally resolved to stop the cycle, and we agreed to try working together to improve our relationship. However, because of everything that transpired, I am now reluctant to be as affectionate as I once was, fearing that, regardless of my efforts, they might still attempt to leave me again. Thus, much trust needs to be rebuilt. In December, they treated me kindly, while according to them, I was unreasonably harsh toward them. For context, they became engrossed in a video game to the extent that they would not acknowledge anything I said unless it pertained to the game, and I often had to wait 1-2 hours for them to finish before we could spend time together. When I confronted them about this and expressed my feelings of being unimportant and uncared for, they claimed it was a coping mechanism for their depression. They argued that I did not want them to have healthy coping strategies and felt as though they were no longer allowed to enjoy video games, which was not my intention, but was their rationale for labeling me mean in December. In January, I attended a friend's birthday celebration, and they insisted, despite evidence to the contrary, that I cheated on them that night, which I did not. A few days later, the guy I briefly talked to reached out to me, and although I thought I had deleted him from all platforms, I overlooked one. My partner saw this, and it sparked a huge confrontation where, no matter how much I tried to explain, they accused me of lying and did not trust me. I assured them of my willingness to do everything possible to demonstrate that they could trust me. They began taking me out for brunch weekly. I organized a museum outing and bought us matching outfits as well as keychains, took days off work to spend with them, and helped them dye their hair. However, during this time, they also stated that we should see or speak to each other less frequently to focus on their studies, which made them upset when they felt we were growing distant. I admit that I reacted strongly when they made a new friend because they met this person in the exact same way they cheated on me, through Bumble. They followed the same pattern of dishonesty, claiming one thing while acting another way. I was harsh, and I recognized that behaving that way would not remedy our issues. Yet I was frightened of repeating the past. Currently, I have not been as affectionate, as they will alternate between suggesting we should just be friends and then expressing anger at me for not being more loving. They have been struggling with depression, taking their frustrations out on me, which is another reason for my reduced affection. They seem unable to comprehend that they cannot treat me poorly while expecting that kind of treatment in return, despite my repeated explanations. Most recently, while en route to their house, they suggested that we should refrain from engaging in romantic activities and simply be friends. I have conveyed for some time that this is not what I desire, but I agreed. While I was there, I openly displayed my disappointment and tried to process my feelings during our time together. They became upset that I did not appear excited to be there and was not engaging as much. When I explained that I was feeling sad about their comments, they accused me of being selfish and attempting to guilt-trip them. For the next 6.5 hours, they texted me, even though I was sitting right next to them, insisting on dictating the entire conversation through their notes, claiming texting was easier. They brought up the incident from January, asserting that, because I do not follow the 5 steps of a proper apology every time I express remorse, my apologies are half-hearted. They accused me of manipulating and guilt-tripping them, making it unbelievable to them that I was sincere in my apologies. I kept asking if there could be any resolution to our discussion that had dragged on for 6.5 hours, to which they gave no clear answer. To me, It felt as though we were arguing for the sake of arguing. They repeatedly claimed they needed to go to bed, but continued texting me about the same topic. Eventually, they forced me to leave but adopted a condescending tone, at which point I became extremely frustrated and shook them by their shoulders, pushing them across the couch. They were already seated on the couch. I cannot explain why I acted that way. It is truly inexcusable. Yet, their insistence on engaging me in circles for 6.5 hours, combined with their accusations of gaslighting, manipulation, guilt-tripping, and disbelief of my words, pushed me to my breaking point. That night, they labeled me a narcissist because I did not seem to exhibit any empathy for their feelings or care about the hurt I was causing them. Still, their main examples of me hurting them revolve around my inconsistent displays of affection, their feelings of being less important than my friends and family, and my lack of time for them. I work full-time and had recently been working 6 days a week. They argued that I do not support them or show concern for their health and well-being, despite my consistent inquiries about their well-being and my offers to assist them however I can, even encouraging them to leave the house, return to school, or pursue activities they enjoy. Regardless of my efforts, I am portrayed as the villain in their narrative. I do not feel permitted to be hurt over their repeated infidelities, nor do I believe I should have to suppress my feelings. They express a desire to move past these issues and state they have changed, yet they continually throw the text from that guy back at me whenever possible. They still accuse me of cheating frequently. They reminisce about when I was highly affectionate and seemingly obsessed with them, but they do not seem to understand that they must work to rebuild that with me, as my affection waned due to their hurtful actions and words. It is becoming increasingly clear that perhaps this situation is not salvageable, and I feel compelled to suppress my pain and pretend to be enamored with them simply to maintain their happiness and hopefully receive kindness in return. In summary, this relationship has spanned 3 years, during which my partner has had significant trust issues since the beginning. They have broken up with me repeatedly, cheated on me multiple times, and are now attempting to rush my healing from their infidelity. Instead of putting in the necessary work to regain my trust, they view me as a manipulative narcissist for expressing my feelings about these issues. I am uncertain whether there is a path forward for us. Story 4. Title: My husband thinks cutting tomatoes into giant chunks for pico de gallo is enough help, but I think him overburdened at home. Is small effort really enough in a partnership? The title is absurd because the argument felt absurd. A summary is provided at the end. We were cooking together. I have been preparing burritos for dinner over the last few nights since we are on a budget and my husband enjoys them. He can be somewhat of a picky eater, so I am glad to make something he likes. While I was doing the dishes and preparing other items, I asked my husband to chop the tomatoes for the pico de gallo. Now, think about what you envision when you think of pico de gallo, small diced tomato pieces. A few minutes later, my husband told me he was finished. I looked over and saw that he had cut the tomatoes into large fourths or really big chunks. At first, I thought he was joking and laughed. Then I asked, "Why are they so large?" He replied, "You just told me to cut them." I still believed he was joking. Laughing, I said, "I have never seen pico de gallo with such enormous chunks." For context, my husband and I are both Mexican, and we both know what pico de gallo looks like and have eaten it many times. This is not some unfamiliar food we have never encountered. He continued to act confused, and I still thought he was joking. He said he thought they looked acceptable, and once I realized he was serious, I asked him to cut them into smaller pieces. At this point, he somewhat refused, stating that he had already done what I asked, and he did not understand what the fuss was about because he had still helped me. I explained that if he left the tomatoes in that state, I would still need to chop them, which was the help I initially needed while I prepared the rest of dinner. He then headed for the couch, and at that moment, I began to feel extremely frustrated because it seemed like such a small task that would take him an additional 2 minutes at most to complete. Things escalated from there, and he eventually got up and did it, but by that time, I was quite fed up because situations like this have been happening repeatedly lately. To provide another example, a few weeks ago, I was folding laundry and mentioned that I was very tired. He then offered to put the laundry away while I rested, and I felt very grateful for the gesture. When he said he was finished, I returned and noticed that he had only put away his laundry and not mine. Again, I believed he was joking, but he was not. When I brought this to his attention, he reiterated that he still helped with the laundry. I explained that I still needed to put away all of my clothes, which is what had made me feel tired, and I mentioned that when I know he has had a long day, I put away both of our laundry, not just mine. Again, it turned into a back and forth, and then it escalated. I ended up putting away my own laundry. I feel that he does the minimum when I ask for help, and he is unwilling to go a step further when I request it. I have noticed that he reacts this way regarding any assistance around the apartment cooking, cleaning, laundry. He is also quite sensitive when I discuss hygiene, such as flossing, showering regularly, wearing deodorant, etc. That is another matter. Additional context. My husband is a wonderful person who is very community-oriented outside of our relationship and is genuinely hardworking when it comes to his own goals and ambitions. However, our relationship has faced its share of challenges. He has performed grand gestures or surprises for me in the past, which I do not ask for, but concerning the smaller matters I mentioned, which, for me, hold significant meaning, or even spending quality time together, things often seem lacking despite my attempts to communicate and have many conversations. I strive to express gratitude for both significant and minor things as much as possible. He spends a considerable amount of time playing video games or engaging in his own activities outside of work. We are newly married, but have been together on and off for 6 years. I left my full-time job and a whole life that I had built to move with him to a new city and have been struggling with unemployment since then. We are also financially challenged for that reason. I do not wish to nag him, but I also do not understand why he remains inflexible regarding what seem, to me, to be minor requests. I handle 95% of the housework, and sometimes I wonder if it is fair because I am not currently contributing financially, yet I feel that other aspects of our relationship also seem unbalanced, regardless of my employment status. I am accustomed to having my own job and an income, which causes me some shame in this area. I am also pursuing other goals and ambitions while looking for a new job. Am I overreacting? Summary: when I ask for help, my husband does what I consider to be the bare minimum, and he appears resistant or unwilling to do more. We are facing financial difficulties, and I am dealing with unemployment, adding further strain to our situation.